finish chewing this, sorry.
How many calories is it?
38.
So you're basically just eating air.
Yeah, just for something to do. My mouth is bored.
Well, do you know what I'm doing?
What are you doing?
I've been looking up how hot fire has to be to burn brick.
Okay, and
there seems to be an actual heat. I think it's about 2,300 or 2,800 Fahrenheit.
crikey.
I can't find that in Celsius. And do you know where I found it? I found it.
Don't tell me it's something to do with the books.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Wow. What, on the forum or something, is it?
It's a blog, a post of Ice and Fire, but mostly fire, where this guy has laid out the logic of how hot fire would have to be, and because Harrenhal was burned down, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was absolutely melted. That was.
Yeah. So he says. So this guy goes on to say basically that at a high enough temperature, he says a minimum temperature of around 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in centigrade Celsius, but then it would literally melt.
Jesus, it's a good thing John found that rock in Winterfell then, wasn't it? He really looked out back then to hide behind.
Yeah, that one rock.
Yeah. Of all the places he could have chosen to hide, he picked the best possible spot.
For some reason, the one rock that was resistant.
Yeah.
So, what do you think?
Of the bells. That's the name of the episode.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I was a bit shocked. I was like, wait, what?
I love how you always every episode of our podcast starts with you telling me what the name of the actual episode was.
As if that has any value whatsoever.
But also every time I'm surprised because I haven't looked. So yeah, that's good. Well, no, I don't know what.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, what did I think? Yeah, you see, you sent a text earlier, and basically I agree with that. And what you said was, this would be one of the best episodes of the show ever if it had the proper setup. Now, if we ignore any issues with setup for the time being, as a contained piece, it is amazing, I think. It's really, 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 really good stuff.
Yeah.
What about you?
It's exactly how I feel. Exactly how I feel. So it's kind of going back to that thing we spoke about the beginning of the Long Night episode, when I said, you know, I had less expectations now, and it's kind of the same sort of thing. If you remove the basically if you forget everything else ever happened in the show ever,
just like Danny and the Iron Fleet, am I right?
Exactly, just like that. We'll talk about that a bit later maybe. The actual episode itself is brilliant, better than any I've seen before, probably. As a contained episode, there's probably only 2 or 3 parts of the episode that in and of itself don't work, and
yes.
I mean that in a way that's contained to that one episode. Probably only 2 or 3 parts of it, and that's nothing in a show that scale of this, to have 2 or 3 moments that, you know, bring you out of it a little bit, which I could bring up later or whatever. But yeah, as a contained piece of entertainment and drama, it was superb. I thought I was really absorbed and emotionally invested as well.
Yeah.
So then when you consider the flaws, or rather the lack of grounding for some of it, which we can go into in a second, the fact that I was absorbed at all is a feat, which I was.
Yeah, that they managed to elevate you from your criticisms and having those like at the forefront of your mind the whole time. Exactly. Yeah.
Because I was worried and I was concerned about the characters and about certain characters. And that's a great feat, and in terms of storytelling in and of itself, the most of the problems come down to the fact that it's been rushed, isn't it?
Yeah, I think pretty much most of them can actually just be tracked to that.
Yeah. If you sort of follow the whole root of all the problems, it just seems to be that. It literally just seems to be if they'd given us a couple of extra seasons, then we could truly have had. And I think that's what's most disappointing for us and for fans of the show, is that this was close to being one of the best shows ever.
Yeah. And yeah, just the fact that they had all the pieces and they had their end game in sight, but they've decided to rush it at the last minute.
Yeah.
Like, that's the weird thing. They have everything they need, but they just went too fast.
And we don't know exactly the reasons for that. That's the other thing we have to be aware of. We don't know contract stipulations. We don't know... Well, we don't know a lot of things. But the truth of the matter is if you want something bad enough, if you believe in something and the integrity of something bad enough, and the integrity of the overall story and what that means, then you can find a way. And what I mean by that is unfortunately, and it is the way of the world, but most people have a price. Every man has a price, as they say. And if it was a matter for the actors, this show was bringing in enough money to hold most of those key cast until the very end. Yeah, and if they wanted to walk away from the project, then at the end of the day, it's their loss. Most fans would go, okay, well, fair play. They've stuck by their guns. They've prioritized the story, which is what they could have done. Just prioritize the story as a first and foremost. And if you lose a couple of cast members, even big ones, it's a real shame, and it would really take you out of it. But if it was for the benefit of the overall production, it's 10 seasons or whatever, I think most people would be happy with that.
Yeah.
And I think if that was the problem they were facing, I think they should have just done it. But we'll never know. That's the problem. We don't know why it was rushed, and it has ended up feeling rushed. And there's never been an episode that's more truthfully exemplified that fact than this one.
Yeah, totally. Oh, right. Let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, so how does this start again? Oh, it's like Varys. The whole Varys ordeal opens it up, doesn't it?
It does.
The weird thing about Varys is, again, all those scenes, they worked well enough for me in this episode, but again, in the wider context, the history of the show that we have to take into account, I don't understand Varys, and I don't know what he wanted. I don't know what his end game was, and I don't know why he was still around. Now, I said a lot there, but basically, Varys hasn't really done anything that has impacted the plot since the end of season 6, when he was the go-between between Daenerys and the Tyrells and the Martells, when he steps in and he says that he will give them
fire and blood
if they ally themselves with Daenerys. Now, that's how he sells Daenerys to them, fire and blood. Yet now, 2 seasons later, he's done a complete 180 flip. I don't know what he expected, to be honest. He seemed happy enough before. Did he not expect her to use her dragons? Anyway, all of this is just, again, it's speculation. We don't have a clue about any of this stuff because Varys is now dead, just like Littlefinger. I think they kept him around for as long as they did just for the final sowing the seeds of, say, like discontent in Daenerys' mind, feeding her paranoia because he supported Jon or whatever, and that's his purpose complete now, so kill him off. But anyway, basically Varys had one more thing to do. We saw him kind of gearing up for it in the last episode. He fulfilled his purpose in this episode, so he was killed off, and that's all well and good and it works, but it doesn't really justify the amount of time he was hanging around doing nothing beforehand.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, they probably didn't have to show him for a lot of those episodes where he was hanging around, I suppose, when you think about it. They didn't even have to actually have him in the shot. So yeah, I agree, because I guess this all comes down to, again, the broad stroke of Daenerys going mad. And what you're saying is that his function in all of that was quite clear. Varys's.
Yeah.
And Daenerys going mad at the end of this feels fine. It feels right in a lot of respects. It doesn't feel earned in terms of the story that we've been shown. All it feels like is if we've missed some of the story. As if, like, that's all
exactly.
It doesn't feel like, in the moment, it doesn't feel like it was realistic. It just feels like they've missed out something.
Exactly. Yeah, and like you're right, in isolation, everything about it feels right. And yeah, Emilia Clarke did a bloody good job.
Really good job,
selling
actually.
that. Yeah, she was amazing in this.
Really came to the fore as an actress in this, or actor.
And it's great to see that, because a lot of people have criticised her over the years, but it's great to see her like right here at the end, really pushing everything she has and like really selling this part of Danny that's pretty hard to swallow.
Exactly. It's hard to swallow, and a lot of fans will be upset with the twist that's occurred in Daenerys' character here, and it's not. We'll come back to this as well, but it's not because people need to understand that those who are upset about the development of Daenerys aren't upset because they feel like, oh, it's Daenerys. They're upset because it doesn't feel earned to them. It doesn't feel like it was developed properly, and it feels out left of center, and it feels I've got another point about that, which I'll come to later. But the reason why I brought that back in there was because you mentioned Varys, and his whole function became clear. The problem is that everything gets signposted just before things happen now. So the very fact that Varys started to see, the very fact that Varys brought up Daenerys going a bit funny, even though we hadn't really had any evidence of it, to be honest, last episode, and Tyrion and him had that conversation last episode, and then the very fact that he started to write that letter at the beginning of this episode shows us what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So if this had been happening as part of something wider, it would have all felt more earned, but it's not. It just ends up being tacked on because they end up shoving it into, and then you know exactly what's going to happen. They wouldn't put those scenes in otherwise. Yep. And you know that as it's happening. So it's not unpredictable. That it is unpredictable, but it's not when you're watching it, because you then know exactly what's going to happen, because otherwise those scenes wouldn't exist.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And Varys, I think it's clear that Varys believed in protecting the realm. Yeah. This goes back to a problem we had a few episodes ago when Arya said that Sansa was the smartest person she'd ever met.
Yeah. Which is now a reality because Arya said that to us, the audience.
Exactly. And that's what they've done here with Varys. Suddenly, out of nowhere, even though we've had 6 seasons where we've had no real evidence of that, from obviously the first season and the second season, it was clear he was trying to pull strings subtly to keep the realm ticking over. And he did mention it once or twice in season 2, if I remember rightly.
Yep.
But you saw evidence of it. So then in season 8, when he randomly starts saying, I've only ever been here, I only want the best for the realm again, you as a viewer are just expected to stomach that and buy it immediately. And we do for the most part, but then if you give it any thought whatsoever, you realise that there's been no evidence of it. It's just him saying it, because he's not really done anything to make things happen. And in fact, the very first time we see him trying to do something to make things happen, which is in this episode, he gets found out almost immediately. So it's, again, as soon as you start looking into this show with any degree of scrutiny, it starts to crumble away a bit.
But as you said, in isolation everything is fine. You just have to pretend you've missed a few episodes or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally that. Yeah, which is again, if we were watching a movie, it'd be fine. It's just because we've been given a style of filmmaking and of writing in the earlier seasons that's just been abandoned, and it hasn't even been slowly abandoned, it's been quite quickly abandoned, and we're sort of being demanded as a viewer to take it, and even casual viewers are finding it jarring. And again, they might not know why they're finding it jarring, but these are the reasons. We're just being told things and they happen and they're presented to us. But if you can just kind of go, okay, forget that. Don't think too much about the overall context. Just pretend you've missed a few episodes, like you said. Then then it's fine, and on top of that, it's done really, really well.
It's really good, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a really strange episode in that regard, because it was just so strong throughout, like in most ways.
Yeah.
And that next scene where Daenerys is, I think it's the next scene anyway, where she's basically breaking down, or it looks like she has broken down.
Oh God, and her hair is all dishevelled and her eyes are red and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, she just looks brilliant.
She really good.
It's just a side of her you'd never seen before.
No.
And
it's really good.
Yeah, just really, really well done from
Emilia Clarke. Yeah, but and this is the thing. It just makes me want to have seen more of that.
Exactly.
Like I wish it, like, because that's it now. That's that part of her done, because we only have one episode left, and I just wish that was stretched over a longer period of time.
Exactly what I was thinking, because it's been reduced to a 2-minute scene essentially, seeing her regress. And that's just, as you say, it just makes me wish that we'd had the same level of deep exploration of the character that we'd had in the earlier seasons, because this is the interesting stuff. This is what we were here for from the beginning. This is what we wanted to see. Now, I think the problem becomes when they think, well, yeah, it's all very well saying that, but if you start to signpost things too much, if you start to show the audience too much, then it becomes obvious what the twist's going to be. That's how they're thinking, but there are two parts to that. First of all, it was obvious what the twist was anyway. So that you can forget about that. Secondly, I've now realised and I've finally understood why Game of Thrones worked so well with its twists, in inverted commas. And we said before that they just always felt like they were gonna, like they should have happened after the twist had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that wasn't the case here, because we hadn't had any of the backing to it.
No.
So let me give you an example. You watch a horror movie and you get scared, not because you don't expect it, but because you know there's something coming and there's suspense that's being built. And the reason you know something's coming is because the music goes all quiet, the characters have a long pause, and then boom, the thing happens. So that period there is them building suspense. But it's a horror movie. That's the shtick it's going for. That's the point of it. So what George did with Ned having his head chopped off was they built everything really obviously towards Ned getting his head chopped off, really obviously, and then it happened anyway. So why it's a shock is because not only have we not seen that before in television and all that sort of stuff, it's because it was presented in a way that made it look like it was going to subvert it the other way. The subversion of your expectations is that you weren't subverted. Exactly. So what they did with this is the opposite of that, where they build towards it all and then have her standing on that wall with her dragon, and she looks around and you now know that she's going to do the thing, because you know how the filmmakers work now, which is that they only try to shock.
Yeah.
So it does the thing that you aren't meant to expect, which then conversely becomes the thing that you expect to happen.
Yeah.
Everything that happened with Ned Stark, everything that happened with Theon and the kids, the Red Wedding, they build towards it in such a way that it looks like something's going to happen, but the Red Wedding's a bit different in fairness, but with most of the things, they look like that's what's going to happen, and then they happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
With the Daenerys thing and the dragon and the fire, they've too strongly hit us over the head for 6-7 seasons with her being goody two shoes.
Yeah.
And then they decided to change tack too late, and then it becomes a case of, well, we know what to expect now. But yeah, so even if your goal is subversion of expectations, it didn't do that, is what I'm saying.
No. Tyrion starts his little bell spiel to Daenerys then, doesn't he? I think. Yeah, he starts talking about the bells. He mentions this a lot in the episode. He's obsessed with those bells, is Tyrion. And if that's fine, again, it's fine in isolation, it makes sense, but like the bells have already been established in season 2 as signaling an attack, not surrender, because they ring those bells in season 2 at the start of the Blackwater episode to signal to the city that Stannis Baratheon is coming and to get the hell inside and, you know, barricade everywhere.
Yeah.
So they've just changed the meaning of the bells here, but, you know, fine, in isolation, it doesn't matter. But again, Tyrion was there at Blackwater. He even mentioned, does he mention it this episode? I don't know. He was there anyway. But now, for some reason, he's insistent that the bells actually mean surrender. Anyway, that's such a minor criticism to make, but it did bug me a bit.
Show me an example of that.
I've always hated the bells. They ring for horror. A dead king, a city under siege.
A wedding.
Exactly.
If the city surrenders, they will ring the bells and raise the gates. Please, if you hear them ringing the bells, call off the attack.
Give the order to ring all the bells in King's Landing and open the gates. That will be our signal that the city has surrendered.
If you hear the bells ring, they've surrendered. Call off your men.
I've always hated the bells. They ring for horror. A dead king, a city under siege.
A wedding.
Exactly.
Hi, I'm DB Weiss.
And I'm David Benioff. We're the creators of Game of Thrones.
We'd like to apologize for Sunday's episode.
Yeah, so it's not I don't think it's a minor example.
Really?
Yeah, and the reason why I don't think it's a minor example is because, yeah, as you say, it's the opposite of what it was previously meant to be. And not only was it something that he becomes adamant about that it means, but it's the expectation within King's Landing that that's what it means as well, to the point where every single civilian is shouting, "Ring the bells!" Like,
yeah, why?
Yeah, because they know.
I didn't get that now. Yeah, I didn't get why the normal civilian people were shouting that.
Well, that's what I mean.
Who are they talking to?
Yeah, this is what I mean. Really, I guess is that if it was the case that it was just something that Tyrion and Daenerys and Cersei and Jaime had all agreed between them, Jaime had all agreed between themselves that this was the marker of surrender in this particular instance, then I would say that your point is invalid.
Yeah.
But it clearly isn't, because everyone else seems to know about it as well, to the point where these civilians are shouting out, "Ring the bells!" because it's a sort of a common indicator, apparently, at this point, of surrender, which was never the case, and we've established that now.
Yeah. There's one more of these criticisms I will make, and I'll only make it now because I'll forget about it otherwise, because it's later on in the episode. It's when Cersei is looking out across King's Landing and she says, "The Red Keep has never fallen," right?
Right.
I guess she completely forgot about Robert's rebellion when her own father and Ned Stark stormed the Red Keep. They took the Red Keep, the mountains smashed the Targaryen children to death. Jaime was sitting on the Iron Throne after killing the Mad King and only got down after Ned Stark walked up to him and intimidated him off it. But I guess she forgot about that minor incident that happened 20 years ago or something. I found that line was really weird.
Well, does she not mean it more literally?
As in what? It's never been destroyed?
Well, fallen, as in literally fallen.
Well, yeah, okay, she's right. Yeah, that's right. That's not what she meant.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make excuses.
I know,
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, again, who cares? It's an isolated episode. We like it as its own unit, so fine.
It's like people have all made their own versions of Game of Thrones, and this is a really bloody good version of Daenerys going mad. Yeah. It's just like, it feels like I'm watching someone's interpretation of a historical event, and they've taken some liberties and embellishments. And I've got to remember that Game of Thrones isn't really a historical event. It's not really a thing.
Yeah.
It's really odd, actually, because like as we've said, in and of itself, this episode worked brilliantly, and the whole bells ringing worked brilliantly and fine. You just have to forget everything else that you ever learned about the show in the previous 7.5 seasons.
Yeah.
And I guess in this episode we do get a bit of the old Tyrion back, sort of. the slightly shallow representation of Tyrion presented in a way which is trying to convince us in the moment that it's the old Tyrion.
Yeah.
Because he sounds like the old Tyrion, and he looks like the old Tyrion, and he does things that are like the old Tyrion. Yeah. And there was a really beautiful moment later in the episode with him and Jaime as well.
Him and Jaime, yeah, I love that.
Actually, they did something shortly after the Daenerys and Tyrion chat about the bells, which was something I suggested, didn't I? Or we did.
Is this with the small folk, the civilians?
Yeah. And they did it really well. And before they even focused on that mother and her daughter, I noticed that they were doing a little bit of it anyway, just showing that a random woman like getting a baby inside or whatever, like you know, little bits and bobs like that. And I just thought this is
little close-ups on extras,
yeah, massively. And then they focused on this mother and her child, which I thought was a really smart idea. And I will come back to the end of their arc, so to speak, later. But I thought I just thought the way they dealt with that whole situation was brilliant.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really like that. And it's funny that we talked about it last week, and here we go, it happened again. Is that a direction thing? Because didn't we say like the last instance, the last clear and really well done instance of that was at Hardhome, and we mentioned that, and now Sapochnik directed this episode as well, and it's happened again. So is that a coincidence in writing, or is it a direction thing?
We spoke about this briefly at the time in terms of whether it was direction or writing. I mean, it is writing in the in its most distilled form. That would be what the script would say. But then I don't know whether I've imagined this, but I've just got a feeling that Sapochnik had said in an interview, this could be completely wrong, so it might not be worth even me saying it, to be honest. I've just got a feeling that I read somewhere that Sapochnik had said we need someone to care about, but I don't know whether that's my brain playing tricks because we've had this conversation.
He did say that. I remember reading that as well. I really like Sapochnik though. Do you know what I always notice about his episodes? It never crosses my mind when I'm normally watching the show, but him and his DOP Fabian Wagner, I think, their cinematography is so much better than what's usually presented on the show. They're such interesting shots in their episodes, and they really have good use of depth of field and focus pulling and stuff. I always notice that in their episodes. I noticed it the Battle of Winterfell there in The Long Night, and I noticed it here again. And I know it really, really stands out to me. I just think they're really good, and I wish more of the show was like that.
I mean, I don't know enough about the pattern of that director and DOP combination to be able to say whether or not what my opinion is on that partnership, but I can certainly say that in this episode it was amazing. You know, the direction and the photography, just absolutely top of the range stuff.
And you know, it's funny, as much as everyone talked up the Battle of Winterfell being inspired by or similar to Helm's Deep before it happened, right? It didn't remind me of Helm's Deep at all, but this episode reminded me of the siege of Minas Tirith in Return of the King.
Yeah.
Just with the the white walls, the destruction, the chaos on street level, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good
really
point.
Similar.
Yeah, Gandalf running up the stairs with the white horse. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That was a joke because he wasn't in this.
Oh, was he not?
No, I totally agree. It really, visually, it actually did have a bit of a similar feel to it. Now I'm thinking about it. Roll the clip.
Oh, it's more work for me.
I'm just gonna keep on saying it so I get you to do more and more work.
Roll the clip. Fuck off.
Everything I say now, I was gonna say roll the clip.
Yeah. Oh my god! Since we're talking about Sapochnik. Rolling clips. I noticed another thing. This is my last Sapochnik related point I think I'll make, right? This is just another conspiracy theory observation by me. He directed Hardhome, as we've said. He directed this, as we've said. When Tyrion and Jon and Davos are going on the little boat up to the camp, which is really close to the walls of King's Landing for some reason, but when they're sailing up to that little camp, it looks exactly like Hardhome. I'm pretty sure they must have shot that at the same location, which I think is that Magramorn quarry up in Antrim. They shoot a few things up in that location. It looked so similar to Hardhome.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, roll
Really?
the clip and show the difference. Oh, I actually think they were the same. Actually, thinking about it.
Well, that's the last point I'm bringing up, because I'm not doing any more clips.
Oh, brilliant. Sorry, some people don't buy where Jamie is at in his sort of arc now. You feel like he's regressed, am I right?
I think really, see, the thing is, Nikolai always sells these moments, so it's not a problem with his performance at all. It's not a problem with anyone he interacts with. It's just I don't buy really that Jamie has gone for so many seasons. He's gradually kind of accepted more of his good charitable nature and like pushed down the Kingslayer persona and tried to be Jamie Lannister and do the best he can for that name, and also separate himself from Cersei in recent episodes. But I just don't buy that he would so suddenly go back to Cersei. And again, this could just be a pacing thing. If this was drawn out over a longer period of time, I would probably buy it. But it's the fact that a few episodes ago he knighted Brienne, their relationship was at an all-time high. Then they made him sleep with Brienne for seemingly no reason other than to make it harder to accept when he leaves her. And now he's gone back to Cersei. It seems very, very sudden considering where he was mentally a few episodes ago up in Winterfell.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but also likewise I feel like I can buy Jamie doing that.
Yeah,
and again, it maybe just comes down to me filling in the gaps in his story that maybe you weren't quite willing to in that moment to fill in, if that makes sense. You probably weren't ready to feel that switch back in his character. But for me, I guess it's more to do with the fact that I never felt Jamie Lannister had changed as such. It's just that we knew him more as the audience.
Okay.
So, for instance, right at the beginning, we learned that Jamie Lannister, he killed the Mad King before he burnt the whole city.
Yep.
And we learn that in such a way that he's presented to the audience as if he's a baddie for doing that, even though we understand the moral complexity of it. And then we see him pushing Bran out of the window, and we're not presented all of the information that we need to know about Jamie at that point. We just know that the action of pushing Bran out of a window is like heinous.
Yeah.
So nothing's really changed, and he even says, I'd do it again. Like, he has this bond with Cersei that it can't be broken, and he may hate her on some level, but for whatever reason he's in love with her, and not just in love with her, he loves her as a sister and as a lover and all this sort of stuff. And you can think what you want in the incestuous, what problems you might have with that from a moral perspective, but that's not really the point of the story, is it?
No.
So for me, it rings true, but because it's not like his character actually changed. It's just that we're being let into a different part of his character, if that makes sense, as an audience. But I do get what you're saying, and I do think that again, it's a matter of pacing. I think I genuinely believe that all of our problems could be solved with 2 extra seasons. That's quite a lot more, by the way. But if we had 2 extra seasons, or even 15 extra episodes overall. I still think 15 is not enough. You know, I really think we really lacked the time that was needed to tell this story properly. These last 2 seasons have just whizzed by way too quick.
Yeah.
Because what I'm saying is stuff that I've read into it. So it's not that I'm right. It's just stuff that I've read in. And if that's not clear to you and to other audience members, then I don't think they've perhaps done it well enough. So
I don't know. I just the way they've treated Jamie recently, it just doesn't really. I don't buy it, because like Brienne was the lens through which he changed and expanded, I think. And that scene in season 3 in which he admits to her the real reason he killed the Mad King, which isn't actually common knowledge. People just think the reason he's called Kingslayer and hated is people think he murdered Aerys Targaryen because Tywin was at the gates and he wanted to let his dad in to save himself, and that's what Ned Stark judges him for. That's what everyone hates him for. And he has, he's accepted that identity, and he's like, well, if they're going to hate me, I'll let them hate me. I'll own this. That's why he accepts the Kingslayer name. That's why he's so bitter and jealous and angry and cocky as well the whole time, because he's deeply, deeply unhealthy in his head because of that and because of Cersei. And through his journey with Brienne, he opens up a bit more. He sees through her that, honesty is actually a virtue. Being honest to who you really are and what your real intentions are. And then, the show didn't actually do the same thing that the books did, in which he kind of systematically separates himself from Cersei and, tries to resolve the River Unsiege peacefully. The show didn't actually do that. They had him threaten Edmure with throwing Edmure's baby over the walls from a catapult, which is like a total diversion from where he is in the books. But fine, the show did that. That's their own decision, so you have to take it on its own merits. But I don't know, him then going through that journey, going up north, being with Brienne again, fighting the good fight for the right cause, and then after all of it going all the way back to Cersei. I don't know, it just doesn't seem right to me. But there's no definitive right or wrong on it. It's just my interpretation. And to me, even the way you described how he opened up to Brienne about what his intentions were when he killed Aerys, are indicative of what I was saying, really, in that all we had there, that wasn't a change in character as such. That was just an opening up of what he was doing that no one else understood previous to that. So I'm not saying the character didn't change, but what I'm saying is that from my perspective, it was always as if the audience just learnt more about him and continued to learn more about him than it was that he as a character had changed, especially the show version of Jaime Lannister, and that he was always connected to Cersei in a way that he couldn't separate himself from fully. But I do understand also why it was jarring for you for him to go back, and why then it became jarring that his journey just... it's totally pointless with the whole Brienne thing, Yeah. No, I do understand where you're coming from there as well, though. Yeah.
I don't disagree. It's weird. I don't disagree with anything you've said either. It's just that it's just a very, very slightly different interpretation of events that is probably more subjective than it is objective, and it's totally fine that you found that slightly off. And again, it comes down to how quickly the pace moved, and they just it didn't develop the situation as well as they could have done because of that.
Can we mention the Golden Company?
Okay. You talk about the Golden Company.
Alright, so the Golden Company. Are the Golden Company the most pointless inclusion in the show?
No.
What's the most pointless inclusion in the show?
How long you got?
Okay, no. Alright. Okay, Golden Company, I don't... What a waste.
Yeah,
right?
I know. Yeah.
They've been built up. I say that's me being generous saying they've been built up. They're shoved in at the last minute, but they've been built up in these last few episodes that we've been shown as an imposing force, 20,000 strong. sell swords. They've never broken a contract. This is book information now, so it's a bit unfair me saying this. But they line up outside the walls. This is another tactic thing. I won't go on about this. I need to mention it. Why are they lining up outside the walls? Why? I don't get it. They're lining up outside the walls to defend the city. Get inside the walls, right? The only siege weaponry Dany and Jon have is one dragon. They don't have any other siege machines, and you already have countermeasures to deal with that dragon, which have been proven to be ridiculously effective last episode. We'll get to this again in a few minutes. So why are they in front of the walls? It makes no sense. Anyway, then they all just die instantly anyway, so fine.
Yeah, so that was one of the... Was this what you were thinking is one of the moments that I had a problem with in and of itself?
Yeah, and then there's another one coming up much later, but yeah.
Yeah, so obviously it was just a moment that was cool again. It was as if they wrote a cool moment again. They didn't care, with the dragon coming up behind and setting them all ablaze. Yeah. I mean, it's just cool, Yeah. That's it.
It's cinematic spectacle.
Cinematic, yeah, totally. Yeah. But again, you have to forget everything you'd ever seen. But their costumes were awesome, by the way.
Yeah, I like the costumes. Their pants are a bit silly, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, was this basically when the siege properly happened, when Daenerys went in and when everyone else started charging inside the walls and all that sort of stuff?
Well, yeah, but before that, she roasts the entire Iron Fleet, which all the guys on Scorpions have gone blind, or their hands are shaky or something. So they were like pinpoint accurate last episode, but now they just can't hit anything, and she just roasts them all. Roasts all the Scorpions, just completely nullified. You see, dragons were taken down multiple pegs in the last episode.
Yeah.
The balance of effectiveness of things like this is really messy these last two episodes, because last episode Scorpions were really, really accurate and really imposing because a dragon needed to die. Yeah. So they made these weapons like unstoppable. Now Dany needs to take the city, so the Scorpions are completely ineffective now for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, no, I agree.
At least she gets rid of Euron.
Yeah. So he was in the running for one of the most pointless inclusions in the show.
Yeah.
You could probably have a top 10 of most pointless parts of Game of Thrones, which includes all of Dawn, the Sand Snakes, if you want to be more specific, Euron, the Golden Company. Direwolves have ended up being more pointless than they ever should have been.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're sort of pointless on a really deep and annoying level, actually. Whereas the Golden Compass are pointless in a pointless way. So it's fine them being pointless because they're so pointless. Whereas
there was never a promise of anything more.
Whereas, as I say, there are certain things like direwolves that and Daenerys' whole arc that were pointless in more deep and annoying ways. Daenerys, that's harsh. Daenerys' whole arc wasn't pointless. It's just that they missed out the third quarter.
Yeah. The weird thing about this, Jon seems like a side character in his own story now.
Yeah.
And it's because Arya killed that bloody Night King.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really true, actually.
In this episode, he seems like a character on the level of Davos or something.
Yeah, that's true. He really does.
Yeah. And that's not a problem in and of itself, because there are no main characters, even though there are two main characters now. But generally speaking, there are no main characters, no main protagonists in this show. But Dany and Jon were always going to come up to that level.
Yeah.
And now, because of what happened at Winterfell, Jon just seems kind of aimless.
Yeah, and I'm really wondering why that's happened, and I've got an idea why that is. I think one of the ideas why it is that they ended up tossing up whether Arya kills Cersei or whether Jaime dies with Cersei in below the Red Keep.
Yeah.
So they ended up having a toss-up, essentially, and they chose that Cersei would die the way she did with Jaime.
So then they wanted something for Arya to do.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, so it's probably the wrong reason. Probably don't need to say too much about that, but yeah, it certainly did. And there was that bit where they're all storming into King's Landing.
Yeah,
I didn't like that bit very much because they're sort of walking side by side, Davos, Jon, and Grey Worm. Yeah,
Davos at the front like a hard man. What's he doing there?
Yeah, he can't fight. He even says he can't fight.
Davos kind of pops up in random places all the time, doesn't he? Remember he's in the soup kitchen.
Yeah, he's the new, he's like the new vessel for every sort of moment, whereas it used to be people like Littlefinger and Varys that did that.
Yeah.
Whereas them doing that made sense in the sort of characters they were. To sort of slide their way into situations, whereas now Davos is that guy and there's no explanation for it. He's just there all the time.
Yeah, I almost laughed at that shot, to be honest.
Yeah,
when it sweeps down and they're all marching in, it just looked really goofy.
Yeah, roll the clip of that. Obviously, Jaime and Euron have the fight.
Oh God, we're coming up. Yeah, and this is one of your other big problems in relation to this scene. When Jaime stabs Euron and walks away, and then Euron looks down the lens and says,
"I'm the man who killed Jaime Lannister."
He doesn't look down the lens, does he?
He might as well. Now, if he's not looking down the lens, his eyes are like a couple of millimeters off.
Let me have a look.
It's too close.
It's stupid, don't get me wrong. Look, it's totally stupid.
Yeah, but it's not inconsistent,
No, it's not inconsistent with his character at this point. Like, his character is ridiculous. Like, he's just some, like, really ridiculous character that doesn't belong. He just doesn't belong in that world, for me. Roll the clip.
Oh, Jesus. I've already rolled the clip back when I originally said it. Don't worry, bud. The clip has already been rolled.
Yeah, but now we have to ask anyone that's watching or listening to this whether they think he was looking down the lens or not. We'll have a poll.
Okay. Roll the poll.
I could say we've actually skipped forward a little bit because I wanted to mention the end of Arya's.
I really liked everything involving Arya and the Hound in this episode.
Yeah.
I cannot believe I'm saying that in season 8 of Game of Thrones after my previous gripes with both of those characters, but like the two of them, everything they're involved with is probably the stuff I like the most about this episode.
It's cool, but also again I kind of don't understand Arya's point now.
Oh, I don't understand her point either. I just thought Maisie was Arya again. And Rory McCann was the Hound again.
Yeah, he's so good as well.
Yeah, when he's not given stupid sweary dialogue, he's great.
Yeah, actually, I thought the dialogue was much better in this episode overall.
It was, yep.
Yeah, so Arya, sort of during that sort of section, runs back outside and she helps that mother that we were introduced to earlier in the episode and her daughter.
Yeah.
I just wanted to quickly go over that very briefly because I just thought the stuff where it focused on these individuals in this crowd, and particularly that moment, I thought was brilliant. Just the way Arya had to leave the mother, tried to pull the daughter along. I thought at that moment she was going to get the daughter to come with her, but the daughter said no, turned around, gets killed as well.
Yeah.
I thought that's brilliant. You know, it felt really real. It felt like we've spoken very briefly before about sort of zombie films and zombie shows, and we spoke about Black Summer on Netflix.
Yeah.
And one of the things I liked about that was how things happened suddenly, but in a way which felt real.
Yeah.
It didn't pause for these characters. It didn't make it so that Arya pulled the daughter to safety and give Arya an extra moment. In fact, it was the moment that should have happened with Jon and Sam in a couple of episodes ago when Jon sort of walked past watching Brienne getting killed and then Sam getting killed and then the next moment everyone was alive.
Yep.
That was what should have happened. And I'm not saying it should have happened in terms of the overall story, but I mean in terms of that sequence. If they're going to put that sequence into that episode, one of those characters, probably Sam, should have died. And it would have been impactful and it would have made sense. And it was that added immersion level as well, where you just feel like this is nightmarish and it's all sort of happening around you. And they captured that really well with Arya and the mum and daughter here.
I really, really like that. I'm kind of shocked they actually focused on the ground level like that to the extent that they did, but I'm glad they did, because we had been missing that kind of thing for so long.
100%.
For the last 2 seasons, and it's great to see them actually really, really focus intently on it in this episode when it's really important to do that. And it did actually work as part of the main kind of crux of this episode, which was Daenerys going mad and that impact. And the impact is everyone on the ground level is completely screwed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if they're going to have that happen, that Daenerys goes mad, then the best way to show it and present it is to have us see what happens on the ground level, and that's the best way of putting it, like you just said, and how people react to that on the ground level, because that makes it human. That's what makes it emotive, the whole sequence.
Yeah.
And also Jon saving the woman being raped
by killing his own man. Yeah.
I thought that's brilliant. Yeah, again, like that's Jon Snow we remember. That's the honourable Stark that we know and love, and the audience know and love. And especially when antithetised by, I don't know if that's the word or if it even is a word, but you know what I mean by it.
It is
by Daenerys going mad at that moment. So essentially she's no longer the Targaryen that we remember and know and love, and he remains the Stark that we know and love. And I thought, really well done, a beautiful moment. It's strange to call moments where people are murdering and almost being raped beautiful, aren't they? You know what I mean? Beautiful from a character development and character perspective moment.
Yeah.
Is it time maybe to talk about Daenerys a little bit? Like, I know we spoke about her at the beginning, but this is really the end of her descent, as she just burns everything to the ground. Her descent, and we have said it's too quick and it happens too suddenly. One of the big problems for me is that this is the woman that we see freeing slaves, we see caring about mothers and children and fathers and men and women and everyone from all walks of life, and this is the character that's been shown to us and presented to us for all of this time, and it's all been discarded within 1.5 episodes.
Yeah,
that's not character development. However you want to put it, that's not character development.
No,
that's a subversion for the sake of subversion. And it might be that that's what happens in George's books. That's not what I'm saying. That's not the point. Because first of all, just because it's in George's books, it doesn't make it right anyway. And like inherently right, you know, from a quality perspective. And second of all, if it is in his books, I presume that the foundations will have been laid over the course of many seasons. We'll have seen more glimpses of it.
Yep.
But the show Daenerys that we grew to know and love presented none of these traits whatsoever, and I mean whatsoever, until about 2 episodes ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue that her burning the Tarleys in the previous season was but I don't buy that. I don't buy that's anywhere near on the same level.
I don't think so. She didn't really have a choice with the Tarleys anyway. They refused like everything she said, so she has to execute them.
Yeah.
You know, fine. She roasted slavers alive in previous seasons. She crucified other people as well. They're not, they're pretty dark acts, but the darkness isn't indicative of a mad tyrant.
No.
It's just indicative of her going to a bit of an extreme length for a just cause. What happens here is nothing to do with any semblance of a just cause whatsoever.
Yeah, and even within this episode, the things that they were trying to show us that were the foundation of her losing her mind, such as her burning Varys, he'd committed treason.
Yeah.
So within the world of Westeros and the world of Game of Thrones that we'd been presented in previous seasons, that would be perfectly reasonable for him to be set to death.
Yeah, exactly. Off with his head.
Off of his head, yeah. But it was meant as a moment by the writers to be one of those moments foreshadowing her eventual decline. But I don't buy that. That's not significant in terms of that building block, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't make sense. If Ned Stark could have done that, that would have been normal for Ned Stark. But what I'm saying by that is even the characters within the world were looking around as if this was an indicator of her going mad.
Yeah, Jon gave her a look. As if she was,
and I'm thinking,
like,
well, why? Ned Stark would have killed someone if they'd have, committed treason against him.
Yeah.
And that's what he would have done. It was a moment where they anachronized. I'm making up so many words. But again, you know what I mean. They anachronized a situation.
Jon beheaded Janos Slynt for not following one of his orders in the previous season. That's like far lower down the rung.
Exactly.
Of crimes than what Varys did.
Exactly. What Varys did was really bad from the perspective of the world of Game of Thrones, and would be punishable by death. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And why build a structure, a foundational structure of a story in a world, if you then later in the show ignore that, which is what they were doing there. They were trying to have us perceive that information from the modern perspective of someone burning someone to death.
Yeah.
Which was just like, well, why are you asking modern me to see this now when you've been previously asking us to view this through the lens of it being a medieval feudal society?
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
But they're flip-flopping between how they want us to perceive things at this point. Is it modern? Is it our modern perceptions of things, or is it the imagining that we were looking through this lens of medieval society? Because you got to pick one.
Yeah, bit of consistency.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Amelia sold the whole thing really well, and
Amelia was great. Yeah,
yeah, and I thought from a sort of a broad strokes perspective, I thought it was fitting in a way to everything, and the way they dealt with the whole repercussions of it all were amazing and cinematic and visually spectacular, and how Cersei overlooked the whole situation was just rang true to me for who Cersei is, and her final little plot moments and character moments felt believable to me.
Yeah. I feel sorry for Lena Headey, to be honest, because she's had so little to do this season, and then she gets really good material to bite into here in her last episode.
Yeah.
And she absolutely nails it, and it made me realise how much I actually missed Cersei being like a key focus of the show, because she's just been hanging around for the last while doing nothing. And just seeing her in these last few scenes just really brought it all back home to me that I really, really miss seeing Lena bite into really hefty material, because I love Lena in this show, and Nikolai. The two of them in this episode were fantastic, as was Amelia.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, really, really good performances actually from those three in particular, like you say. I guess, I mean, we've basically gone over everything apart from two more things, which is the very ending, which we should come to in a second, and just before that we'll briefly touch on. All the fans knew it was coming, so it's fan service.
It's fan service. Yeah.
It's definitely fan service. Again, it might come in the books. That doesn't make it any less fan service. It's all about presentation of it. Yeah. And in the way it was presented, it was fan service. It was
fan
cool.
Service. Yeah. See, this is the thing. The scene was done well. The fight was good, but it didn't deserve that amount of time.
No.
Because who cares? What does this change? What does the outcome of this fight change? Absolutely nothing whatsoever. Has no impact on anything. If the Hound survived, nothing would be different. If the Mountain survived, nothing would be different.
So true.
And it went on for too long. It's totally fan service, but again, in isolation, it's a really good fight. And also, I will be quite positive about something here, very briefly. I loved seeing armor actually act as armor in this fight. in that so often we see film and TV just completely disregard how armor works, and someone swings at someone else with a sword and they die, despite the fact they might be wearing like chainmail or plate, which is pretty much impenetrable. But here we see the hound swinging at the mountain. His sword bounces off his breastplate multiple times. That's great because you can't cut through that. Also, you know, the mountain holds up his hand, deflects blows with like the vambraces on his arms. Great as well because you can't cut through those. And then there is one little moment where the hound stabs right through his breastplate. Usually I would have an issue with that because it's not really realistic, but I do excuse it in this instance because this is the hound's entire purpose in life. He's full of rage and adrenaline. He's a big guy. He's super strong anyway. And if there's ever a moment where you can excuse someone shoving a sword through a chunk of iron or steel, it's this.
Fair. Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it was... Yeah, that's really well put, actually. And also, I will briefly say that it worked better as the ending to his arc, if not purely for the fact that only a few minutes before he'd said to Arya, look at what revenge does to a person,
yeah.
Look what it's done to me.
Yeah.
And it was a good line, and then his ending made that line even more prophetic. And it also made Arya's arc stronger as well. So the combination of those two characters together, which you'd already said worked really well, with a really strong and potent and meaningful line followed by his ending, it did work well. And it did give his arc a little bit of meaning, even if I can still understand what you're saying, that there wasn't really a purpose to it.
Exactly. See, if this is to happen in the books, I imagine it will be serving some other character. Like it'll be Cersei's trial by combat or something. Like she chooses the mountain, he fights for the faith, whatever. That would make more sense because it's not literally a final boss fight on the steps of a crumbling tower where like he chips away and his armor falls off bit by bit.
And then the ending, which was again as the result of something very, very prophetic in season 2.
Yeah, with the ash.
Yeah,
and King's Landing destroyed.
I think I thought that was really well done.
Yeah,
they didn't mention it. They just had the ash slowly falling.
Yeah, you put the pieces together yourself.
Yeah.
Although I imagine they'll have a similar shot in the final episode of Daenerys actually walking up to the throne, maybe.
Yes.
More on the nose. But yeah, I like they didn't really draw specific attention to it in this. It's just up to you.
Yeah, and then Arya gets on a horse. I don't really know what the horse thing was about, personally.
I don't know. I imagine there'll be loads of stupid articles online about deciphering what this means. Right?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what it means. Like, there are loads of interpretations for what a white horse could mean. A white horse could mean purity, hope, life. There's also the pale horse, which is a sign of death in the apocalypse. There's also the pale mare in the books is the name of a type of flu that decimates people outside Marine towards the end of A Dance with Dragons. And like there are loads of real life interpretations of white horses in history and culture as well. There's no like definitive meaning of that. Although what I did take from it myself when I was watching the episode is that Arya is choosing to serve life over serving death, and that lines up with her leaving the Hound and helping people rather than cutting down Lannisters or anything like that, and then finally just getting up on the horse and riding out of King's Landing.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I don't know, I might be wrong.
Yeah, you might be, but that's a cool interpretation. Doesn't matter if you're wrong. Or it could just be Bran that's walked into that horse and she's like, Bran? Imagine if it's just that.
Oh my god. That'd be brilliant. I want that to happen. Bring on the schlock. Bring on the stupidity.
You've just like created this really nice, meaningful point. You know what I mean? Oh, I can't speak. You've just created this really nice and meaningful expectation of what it could have been or interpretation of what it could have been, and it's literally just that it was Bran.
It's just Bran. Oh, he actually did something.
Yeah, exactly. At least that way he would have done something. He would have brought a horse to her when she needed. What's Bran? What was ever the point of Bran? Ever? Not even joking.
I think he could have been cut from the show and nothing would really change, would it?
No. Would have changed Jaime Lannister's arc a little bit, but okay, kill him there when he falls out of the the thing. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything since he went up north, sat in the tree.
No, and the army of the dead is going to be coming south anyway, regardless of whether he's... Oh, are they? Regardless of whether he's there or not? I don't know. That whole... him being the target for the Night King, I think that's a bit of a show.
Oh, yeah, massively.
Contrivance.
Yeah.
They're always going to be coming south anyway. We know that.
Well, they're not coming south anymore. They're all dead.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, so just... I think that's it, really. That wraps it all up, really, in terms of our thoughts on the episode. Overall, we really enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah.
As a self-contained episode, I give it 5 out of 5. As a part of a wider scope of a TV show, I'd give it 3, maybe 2. I agree with those scores. Yeah. If anyone has actually got this far in the video, watched the whole thing and listened to it, it might be worth pointing out that we've had a couple of people saying, why don't you put more video in? Well, it's over an hour long, and if we were to put video of the episode in this podcast video, then we'd need more footage than the length of the actual episode. So we'd need to include all of the episode in the video, which is, you can't do on YouTube. So there's no way around that, really. We'd like to include more video, but A, the point I've just raised, and B, that would take a long time, and we're trying to get these out in relatively soon after we've actually seen the episode, so that it's still relevant. Otherwise it would take us 2 months and it would no longer be relevant. So and also it's just it's a little bit of fun. We like to discuss these things, have these chats, and we want to engage with other people as well, so we'd be interested in hearing anyone else's thoughts. So yeah, thanks for watching. And yeah,
bye.